Hello, chess family. It's me, National Master Jesse James, and today we're going over a very fun game I got to play against the Philidor Defense. In this one, I'm going to build up a kingside attack very slow but very strong, even including a brilliant move where I'm going to crush through on the king side. So, let's take a look at this game. Here I got to play against a strong candidate master. I'm playing the white side. I started off with my coveted e4, and here they played pawn to e5. Knight f3 attacks the pawn, and here my opponent plays pawn to d6. For those of you who don't know, this is the Philidor's defense, a very solid way to play. The only reason why I don't think it's the best is because it actually stops this bishop from getting outside the pawn chain. With that being said, the bishop is going to find a very good diagonal for it anyways. Here I like to play like Morphy. I play pawn to d4, trying to open up this center. I like to try to get aggressive games going. He takes, I take back. Knight f6 attacks the pawn. Knight c3 defends the pawn. And here he plays bishop to e7. And here, after playing this opponent many times, I went ahead and decided not to go with all the mainline theory, but instead just played pawn to g3. Here I'm going to go ahead and fianchetto. And once my pieces are properly developed, I'm going to go ahead and build up a kingside attack. He went ahead and castled. Bishop g2, that's where it belongs. Rook to e8 gets played. Castles, and a very nice move here, bishop to f8. For those of you who don't know this, the idea behind this, the bishop simply moves back to f8 here so that the rook is opened up over here to attack and put pressure on the e4 pawn. You have to be very careful. A lot of times with the Philidor defense from the black perspective, black does not have many weaknesses at all, if ever, and is going to slowly attack white here. Now, white is typically going to have more space, but turning a space advantage into a win does take some practice. One of the cool ideas with this bishop f8 move here too is that the pawn will typically go to g6 and bishop g7, and the king is even safer. Black will typically build up on the queen side with like c6, a6, and b5 and just slowly push you off the board. So here, I'm going to take some preventative measures against that. As I said, b5 is a threat, so I go ahead and play pawn to a4. He played pawn a6, thinking about b5 ideas, and here I played pawn to a5 myself. Now, if b5 ever does get played, I can simply en passant here. Here you played the knight b to d7, a very natural and regular move that gets played here. Here the knight can go to c5, and all of a sudden you can see all the pieces here are putting pressure on e4. Oh my. So here I went ahead and played knight to f5. I like this move. A knight on f5 is usually worth the pawn, at least that's what Kasparov says, as there's many attacking ideas. The idea was really not to maintain it. Even if they try to push the pawn forward, have knight h6 check, maybe things get a little bit weird there. But here you're going to see a fun maneuver I do. He went ahead and played knight c5, putting pressure on the pawn. And here I went ahead and just played pawn to f3. I'm going to slowly try to push forward and build up my king side. Here he went ahead and played pawn g6. Of course, he's more than welcome to take on f5 here. And after pawn takes back, well, I don't have to worry about my e-pawn as a target anymore. And also, well, the knight here on f5 is, it's going to be gone, but I'm going to get the bishop pair here. So I'm very happy with this. g6 got played. Now you could jump to h6 here, check, although I didn't see how the knight was going to get away. So here I kept it simple and played the knight back to e3. Here I want to jump the knight to d5 at some point. If they do play c6, you can see my knight can jump over to b6. And also the d pawn becomes what's called a backwards pawn here. Bishop g7, this is where the knight wants to go anyways. And here I start up with my kingside attack. Pawn to g4. I'm going to slowly push these pawns forward here and hopefully just shove them down his throat. Here knight e6 got played. Definitely not a good move here. As I mentioned, I'm going to try and push these pawns forward. So here, I'm very happy because I'm just going to get some free tempos by attacking the pieces. Also, well, the knight's not putting pressure on e4, at least right away. I played the knight over to e to d5. This jumps out the way and also opens up the bishop. The knight was threatening to go to f4 here, so we definitely got that square underneath control now. Here he took. I took back with the knight. Pawn takes is also another fun way to play, but then, well, I won't be able to put pressure on the d pawn later on. Here black plays bishop d7. An interesting move. Like I said, a lot of times black is really just going to kind of wait around and hopeful white will make some kind of weakness, and then they're going to attack it. My opponent's been very good at that, so I have to make sure if I do attack, try not to make too many weaknesses. Here I played f4 with a simple idea. I'm going to go f5. I'm going to go g5. Push all these pawns forward here. Again, it's a king side pawn attack, or a pawn storm, as they are also known. He played bishop c6, which makes sense. Again, he's not moving his pawn structure around a lot, and this is very typical. He's not going to make any kind of weaknesses, but he will make trades here. I went ahead and played pawn f5. Let's kick this knight out of the way. Also, again, I'm looking for f6 ideas. He took on d5 here. Perfect. A move that I would be a little bit more scared about is knight to c5 here, as this puts pressure on the e4 pawn. By taking, pawn takes. Well, now I don't have to worry about that pawn anymore, and I have the bishop pair. The knight jumps to c5, but as you can see, it's not attacking anything anymore. And here, with just grabbing that bishop pair and not having my e-pawn weakness, well, computer is giving me a +1 advantage. Let's keep making progress here. Pawn to g5 gets played. There's a nice little idea of just playing pawn to f6 in a lot of these variations. Now, even if the kingside attack doesn't work, you can see the bishop gets trapped behind this pawn wall. And if you go to endgames here, well, that's just an endgame win. He goes ahead and plays bishop e5. Again, he was worried about pawn f6 with this getting trapped in there. Of course, if he takes, well, rook takes, and I'm very happy with this open file here. So bishop e5 gets played. And here I had an old idea that I'd seen or used in the Sicilian, which is basically to bring the queen to h4 and the rook to h3. How do we do that? Well, we're going to go ahead and start off with queen to g4, then go to g4, then to h4, and then simple chess rook f3 to h3, and hopefully something good will happen. Queen to d7 got played, queen over to h4, and here we play queen e7 here, a move I was very happy to see. The queen is hoping to jump over to f8 and, well, get some defense going. But here it just gives me a great tempo. Pawn to f6. Again, the queen wants to go to f8. My opponent is very conscious of the kingside attack and is looking for any kind of way to stop these threats. Unfortunately, the queen looks very, very unhealthy here. She can't move at all, literally, as all the squares are taken up by my pawns. And here I've pretty much shut down the kingside. But, again, h7 is a big weakness here, and I'm going to go for that attack over there. Here I played pawn to c3, not the best. Here Tate would have been happy with a very nice idea here of rook a3, rook to h3 here. This is a beautiful lift, or Capablanca's rook as it's sometimes known. And I wish I would have played this one. Here I played pawn c3. Not the best move, but a decent move altogether. Yeah, that's okay. This does make some weaknesses here with d3 and b3. Again, rook a3 would have been a much stronger move here. Here my opponent played the rook a to d8. Not too sure what the rook's doing here, but it's doing it there. And here, I continue with my idea, rook to f3. Again, I want to play the rook over to h3 over here so I can get my attack going. Here, pawn to h5 got played, a very decent move here. Because, well, if you go ahead and take on h6, believe it or not, this is not going to be the best for us because, well, the king can run over to h7. They call this an umbrella pawn, and he's going to be able to hide behind my pawn, and I'm not sure I'm going to break through anymore. Believe it or not, I thought it was best to keep the pawn on h5 here, as I do have a breakthrough idea here. Yeah, you can't always go with the rule, en passant is always right. Here, it definitely would have been wrong. So h5 got played, and I got excited. I noticed the idea here. I played rook over to h3, and you're probably thinking, well, what's the idea here for breakthrough? Feel free to push pause and see if you could think a few moves ahead to see what you're supposed to play. Here, knight b3 got played. I'm not ready to sacrifice a rook just yet, so rook to b1 got played. Rook over to d7. Again, I don't know what's going on with this rook over here. I guess just moving. Maybe he was planning on moving the rook out to allow the queen out in some variations. Again, he's got to play something like a c6 or b6. But as you can see, I've got my pawns over here, and they're trying to restrict the queenside counterplay for as long as possible, at least until I can get my kingside attack going. And here, well, I found my idea. I played bishop to f3. What's the idea? I'm going to sacrifice on h5 here, and believe it or not, there's no good way to stop this. In fact, the computer's giving here, bishop takes on f6, giving away a piece, just so you can try to get your pieces at least active, or at least try to give some escape squares for the king. All right, here he played rook e to d8. Maybe he just missed the idea. I did not. Here I'll go ahead and play bishop takes on h5. Here chess.com is very generous, giving me the brilliant move. I think it's a very nice move. I don't know if it's brilliant, but hey, I'll take it. And the idea is very simple here. I'm going to open up this H file. And again, the queen really can't move anywhere for defenses. Here, black is just, yeah, nothing good to do here. He played bishop to d4 check. I played c takes. He played queen to e8. And here, well, I went ahead and just played bishop to f3. Computer doesn't like this move as much. Computer is giving bishop to e2 here, as accurate as possible. Here, black can go play after bishop to f3, queen to e1 check, but, you know, hey, I'll go ahead and accept that. And, yeah, I would just take the queen, and the queen's going to go back to h4. Either way, I'm going to be checkmating. I guess the main difference is it says it's checkmate in 7 rather than checkmate in 2, as bishop e2 would have blocked the queen. But here, after the bishop just moves back, we're just going to be checkmating either on h7 or on 8. I'm sorry, on h8. There is no h7 checkmate. It's h8 or g7 over here. All right, guys, hope you enjoyed this. This was a very nice idea by using your pawns to open up on the king side attack over here. And this very nice idea that even if you do not break through with the king side attack, the bishop gets restricted in here. You can go into a winning endgame here as the bishop cannot move around. All right, guys, hope you enjoyed this. We'll see you in the next video.